Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversation in Horror. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I am also the project manager of Something Wicked Film Festival and Events because I like to say project manager. I like to manage people and conversations about anything and everything that will scare you to death. And the movie we are watching or discussing today is a film that is not actually all that scary, in my opinion, but just one hell of a kick-ass action horror film. We will be discussing the amazing werewolf film, Dog Soldiers. And with me today to discuss this movie is some of my favorite people in the world, Sarah and Ryan Panozzo. I want you to say hey to everybody.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
It's gonna be a good day today when we talk about werewolves. Now, everyone out there, if you don't already know, I am an absolutely huge fan of two types of monsters: werewolves and zombies. Those are my two favorites. So I really, really want to get into discussion on this movie because we don't do many werewolf films. The last time we did a werewolf film was an American Werewolf in Paris, and we all know how that ended up. So we're going to actually talk about a good movie today, Dog Soldiers. And to get it started off, I would like to know about your experiences watching this amazing film. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first because this was actually one of those movies that I had never even heard of until I met Ryan and he got me to watch it. And I was like, this is probably tied for first place as the best werewolf movie I have ever seen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With An American Werewolf in London, of course. But it's so well done. And it's so much fun to watch and experience.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, so it's, growing up, I think I saw this for the first time on Sci-Fi Channel back in the day.
Oh, okay.
And I'd seen like Predator and stuff like that. And I guess Predator would be the most, I know we were just talking about it, the most direct comparison. This movie is basically Assault on Precinct 13 and Predator, right?
Yep,
and,
yep.
It struck me that, hey, it's your average sci-fi kind of low budget movie, but everybody gave it their all, and it struck me as like, good. And here we are. What was released in 2002, so we're freaking 22 years later.
Oh my God.
Great.
Yeah, and it still stands. Like, I mean, the
Yeah.
werewolves themselves, like you said, werewolves aren't given enough love.
They aren't.
So much that goes into making a werewolf that makes it difficult compared to like making a sparkly vampire or just giving somebody a set of fangs.
That's right, Team Jacob.
Whereas you can actually show a process of a werewolf or just show a really crappy CGI version, which this one does not do.
No.
Terrifying werewolves that look phenomenal.
They're like grounded in reality too. It's that could be the closest thing to a real werewolf that we'll ever see.
Yeah, and the fact that my wife had never seen this film either, and I recently inundated her with this because she also likes vampires and werewolves, and I hate to say this, she enjoys the Twilight movies and the books and all that type of thing.
So does he.
No, the
don't worry.
first.
The first one, but she had never heard of this movie either. And I was a little surprised because she's seen a lot of werewolf movies. And I said, dude, this is like one of the greatest werewolf movies ever. You have to watch Dog Soldiers. So we watched it. And surprisingly, because I keep forgetting that she doesn't really like the gore films or too much horror, she absolutely loved this film. And that's a rare thing for me to find a movie that my wife, who only watches werewolves and vampire films, actually loves. So everyone out there, my wife doesn't really dig the horror movies too much. She's more or less the Bridgerton crowd. And I'm not going to knock Bridgerton because some of that stuff is actually pretty damn good. But I will say that is not the same thing as watching Dog Soldiers. But my wife did watch this. She loved it. And that's one of the reasons why we're discussing it is because I agree with you two. This is one of the best werewolf movies out there.
And I think the reason for it, like you guys already said, is that it's based in reality. I mean, all the characters are very real. The circumstances are very real. The progression, like you feel for these characters throughout the movie. They become real people to you. And the fact that they just happen to be fighting werewolves that they didn't know even existed at the beginning of the movie is just an extra cherry on top of the cake. Because realistically, they could be fighting anything in this movie, but it just kind of fits.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, Ryan, you said I didn't think about till now is you referenced Assault on Precinct 13, and that's pretty damn much what the plot of this movie is. And I'm surprised I didn't notice it because Assault on Precinct 13 is one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. Mind blown because I did not think about it until now.
Earning my keep on the first podcast. Bam.
Yes, doesn't happen very often, but sometimes this is the reason why we do these conversations, because I love to have guests who actually give me something in return, so that when I watch the movie again, I get to see some different aspect or different way of looking at the film. So thank you so much for that one.
First one's free.
So this is one of Neil Marshall. Neil Marshall is the director and writer of the film, and this is one of his earliest films. And this is the one that actually got me to know who the hell he was, because I didn't know who the hell he was before this, but I certainly knew who the hell he was after this.
Well, yeah, he had this one, and then 2005 he did The Descent.
The Descent, which is still one of my favorite movies of all time. He hit it out hit it out of the park the first couple times. I'm sorry to say he started doing some television stuff, and then of course his quality went a little downhill.
Well, it depends on what you hit, because like The Descent was also grounded in reality, and he went on, did some stuff for TV that he actually was nominated for Emmys. So like he did a couple episodes of Hannibal, Westworld, and then he did 2 of the most popular Game of Thrones episodes, which was the Battle of the Bay, where they blow it up with the ship.
Blackwater Bay.
The Blackwater Bay. And then he also did the fight of the wildlings versus the fort.
The Battle of the Bastards?
No.
Or the other Watchers on the Wall.
Watchers on the Wall. Yep. So it was 2 of the biggest battle scenes where it just focused on one location, and they were phenomenal episodes.
2 best episodes of the series.
Arguably so. And that was the one that he was actually nominated for an Emmy for. So he's done some good stuff. And recently, I'll agree with some of the other people who talked about him online, like Hellboy could have been really great, but we didn't necessarily need it. And there was a lot of like production meddling. But he himself, when he puts out something, tends to be pretty well done.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
Well, since I have not seen Game of Thrones, but I am familiar with. Yeah, I know you're looking at me strangely. I have not been able to see Game of Thrones yet. I'm a little behind everybody. I am very familiar with his work for Hannibal, since I love that entire series from beginning to the end. And Hannibal managed to get some amazing directors on there that I would have never thought would have been able to be on that show. That being said, I'm still, unfortunately, watching Westworld. I haven't finished that. Neither did anyone else by the sounds of it.
They only ended it after 2 seasons.
But Neil Marshall did do a very, I guess, comic book, almost accurate version of Hellboy, but no one got it because he like threw in 20 different stories in the one movie, and you weren't, the only people who would get the Hellboy movie he did is if you actually read the comic book, and could laugh at the fact that he just cobbled together 20 different stories in the one movie.
Are we talking David Harbour or
yes, the David Harbour one.
Oh yeah, that
yeah, like I said, I also think that was a little bit of production meddling than it was more him.
It had to be.
But if you went in not knowing what Hellboy was, I think it was a pretty decent film. It'd
still be confusing with all the different stories that they cobbled together.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty. It was really pretty.
I like David Harbour.
Yeah,
I'm guilty of him. I like him in pretty much everything he's in, even though some things it looks like he may not have known what the hell type of movie he was making when he made Hellboy. He's so much fun to watch. That being said, getting back to Dog Soldiers, that I can see a lot of parallels between Dog Soldiers and The Descent that isn't really there in his later movies, especially in terms of the cinematography, where the characters are in very cramped places, and he does a lot with very little. And that's what makes both of those two films especially effective.
Definitely so. The Descent is super terrifying. Like, one, I'm claustrophobic, so like that alone is really creepy. But knowing that something is in the dark with you that you can't really see is super just gruesome.
Yeah, you're afraid of claustrophobia, and I'm afraid of monsters that rip my throat out. So it's like the perfect movie for both of them.
Yeah, and they do fit well. I mean, you get this group of men or this group of women who are going through like training exercises of some sort. They're about to have some fun. You get this camaraderie between all of them. You get a full backstory of the characters with little time. And then this horrific monster is released into the story, essentially. And you see them act rationally and reasonably throughout the entire movie, which is very fresh.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think having the location in someplace other than America also makes it a little bit more of a fresher type story. I think it makes, and that's the same with The Descent too. The idea of where these movies take place is much more interesting because they don't seem like there's something that could just be done by any other American director.
Well, and if Dog Soldiers took place in America, it'd be a completely different thing because I believe it's part of like the Cherokee tribe that they had dog soldiers. And it was part of their culture. And it's maybe it's the Cheyenne. I think it's the Cheyenne, but it's a completely different story at that point. Whereas if it's UK based, and they even throw in the whole the Beast of Bodmin Moor, which is like a real thing. It's like as famous as Loch Ness Monster over there. It becomes a real thing. Whereas we don't have a ton of werewolf stories in America. In the UK, werewolves were left and right.
We've got skinwalkers.
That's not a werewolf, then.
We have the closest we can do is shapeshifters and wendigos here. You know what? That is something that's lacking over here. There's a lot of American mythologies that involve werewolves. They're not typically here in the U.S. They're usually something that's very European, very foreign. I didn't think about that. Okay. Now, since we all love werewolf movies, I just want to get your ideal on some of. We're including Dog Soldiers as one of the better ones. So, what are some of your favorite werewolf movies? Because the people who watch this, they only know our reference for American Werewolf in Paris, not any other werewolf movie really. What are some of your favorite werewolf movies?
American Werewolf in London is by far like one of the best of all time. The other one that I would say is very well done is The Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, honey, you want to go watch The Wolfman?
Oh my God, stop it. But that was another one that like we grew up watching and we were like, this is really well done. I know it didn't do great at the box office, but the transition from human to beast were just so well done.
Victorian setting.
Yeah, it was very haunting.
Yep.
And it just fit.
Same. Same. I'll be a little different. Oh God, werewolf. I panicked.
I mean, I can name more. I mean, you get like Ginger Snaps, which becomes a women of coming of age story.
What'd you call
them? Otherwise, from Trick or Treat, which is nobody knows it's a werewolf thing until the end. But that's another one that is very well done. But yeah, I mean, then you get like a bunch of the cheesy werewolf stuff like Teen Wolf. And you're like...
Something against Teen Wolf. I grew up watching Teen Wolf. Now the Michael J. Fox version, not the new version.
Yeah, no, I watched the Michael J. Fox version, but yeah, then you get the teenage version where it's like, oh, this is all CW, like love and drama and stuff.
Penny Dreadful.
Penny Dreadful also had a good werewolf.
Oh.
Yeah, so I liked because that one was, Old West. He came over from America to foggy old London town, and it was a lot more out of his control, a lot more animalistic, a lot more brutal, and I think that reflected the beast, and as it were, that show was awesome. It had so much potential.
It did.
Like I think in this movie they even state like the werewolves can choose when they turn, and they just stay as werewolves this entire movie. Another good one that I really enjoy, which is pure comedy, is Werewolves Within.
I was going to mention that one too. Go ahead, you talk about it.
I love this one so much because it is another one of those comedic movies, but it is so well done, and it's really a whodunit. and there's such a large cast of people that you really are sitting there wondering who did it the entire time, and you start hating these people, and you're like, yes, kill them all.
Jesus Christ, honey.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, within the last 10 years, Werewolves Within is probably one of my favorites that has come out. I also mentioned the one that's a couple that are a little old school, so I don't know if you've seen them both, but I'm going to mention the Jack Nicholson Wolf movie. That's what I love that one.
Pfeiffer?
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer and James Spader. Dude, James Spader is awesome as the villain in there. So I love that movie. And then, of course, I have Wolfen, because for everyone out there, that whole year had 3 of them: American Werewolf in London, The Howling, and Wolfen. I do believe American Werewolf in London and Wolfen have aged better than The Howling. I used to love The Howling when I was a kid. And I've seen it a billion times because I love the transformations in that movie. But as I got older, I started to see that one age a little bit more than the other two. American Werewolf in London still stands the test of time, I think, because of the comedy in it.
Yes.
I think the comedy helps that one stand the test of time, which is what is missing in The Howling. When I watch it, I don't really find anything humorous in there, even though it is directed by Joe Dante. I just don't find it as humorous as I do in American Werewolf in London. I don't know.
I think that's why this one, Dog Soldiers, works as well, because it's got this comedy in it.
Exactly.
The guys playing off of each other. I mean, they make jokes. The commentary, movie, the one-liners are just phenomenal.
It's really good characterization, and you can tell they had fun doing it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's why this film has aged so well. I didn't realize it was 22 years old. Jesus Christ. It doesn't seem like it has aged 22 years. Oh my God.
And, there's little hints, like there's not a cell phone in sight. Everybody just living their best life. But yeah, I mean, it's Scotland, so we haven't been there. I can't really talk down about them. We live in Appalachia, but
at the same time, if you're in a military training exercise, I highly doubt you're going to have a cell phone with you, especially when, the walkie they give you is bugged and not supposed to work in the first place.
How could they?
Oh my God.
And actually, fun fact, they have narrowed down to the exact day when this takes place.
Oh.
So the whole movie, they talk about this infamous matchup for football between Germany and England.
We call it soccer here, honey.
Stop it. But it's heavily implied that September 1st of 2001, England really beat Germany 5-1, and there was a full moon that night. So September 2001. Oh. It's just one of those weird, I don't know if they happened to plan that, or they were like, this is a fun thing, let's go ahead and put it in the movie, or if it just happened to wind up like that.
It's way too specific.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
The writers put that in there not knowing they would actually make it to the final cut of the movie. That's interesting, though, because it does put a date on the actual movie, which is very rare for some of the movies like this. So
yeah.
Now, in your research, if you did research, Panozzo, did you find anything out about when they were discussing the sequel to this, which has never been made?
So they've talked about it multiple times, and the last one I found was the director's last movie came out in like 2023, and he was asked about that, and he said if the lawyers could get their fingers out of the pot, they would make the movie. He's known what he wanted to make it about. He hinted about it when what's her name, Megan cuts her hand and there's blood left on some glass, and he was like, that was going to be the gateway into the next movie. They were going to study werewolf DNA and how it effectively works. So he already had stuff planned out, but lawyers got involved in it, I guess, with whoever the main production company was, and they haven't essentially been able to make it since then.
And we've discussed on the show plenty of times before in which, like, the early versions or early films of young filmmakers, when they get them made, the rights revert to someone else and then they don't own them anymore. And this is just another story in which the creator of the film no longer has the rights to control it, and therefore it is out of their hands, which is sad because
Yeah.
I believe Neil Marshall could have done or will do a great sequel to this. I mean,
And this could have easily been like an entire series that we get like Evil Dead over a couple of years. We randomly get a new one of, oh yeah, we've got more dog soldiers. But it's been nothing since then, which is really disappointing. And I know that this movie didn't do like great at the box office. Its budget was 2 million and it made 3.5.
oh,
But it's got such a huge cult following nowadays. I think people would be swarming to the theaters to see this, especially if you've got the semi-realistic werewolves that they did. I mean, the stuff that you see is really, really creepy when you listen to the backstories of it. Like, the actors were making fun of it because it's like these poor ballet people who are like standing on point in these giant like latex suits, and they're just sweating, covered in fur, and they just and they had a small seeing hole out of the mouth, so they couldn't see where they were going. They couldn't see what they were doing. So they're watching them trip over themselves and they're laughing. But then Sean Pertwee was like, the scene where the one looms over him in the bed, he was like, I almost pissed my pants because it was so realistic.
Oh my god.
But I mean, they're so well done, and the reactions to them throughout the film, which is really realistic, is very comedic at the same time. Like, you get the scene where I believe it's Spoon is like barring up the door, and he's got a hammer and nails and he's hitting stuff, and a hand shoots through the door, and it's like, how do you react to that? Well, you've got a hammer, you're going to start smacking it. But you've never seen so many household pieces of just regular item become a weapon.
Holy cow. Especially in the hands of Spoon.
Yeah. Spoon is a man of human destruction. Like, holy crap.
He's my spirit animal.
Yeah. He's actually a boxer, and that's what he's most well known for, is boxing. I mean, there's really only 3 big actors in this film who became something big way after this. I mean, it's been some time. Like, Liam Cunningham went on to do Game of Thrones and a few other things. Sean Pertwee has been a character actor forever. The kid went on to do like Grey's Anatomy and a bunch of other TV shows.
Salt McTavish.
Yeah, he's done video games and everything. I mean, those 3 have hit it so big since then, and thinking that this was like some beginning entry level stuff for them is really impressive, especially Neil Marshall. I think this was his second thing, but it was the first one he directed. So it's very impressive that this kind of movie was that well done and that well put together.
Yep. And as we've been talking, I've been thinking about the sequel, what ideals he had for a sequel with this. I'm a little wondering if he borrowed some of his ideals for his last movie he did called The Lair. I don't know if you ever saw his last movie, The Lair.
I haven't, and that's where they were asking him about the sequel to this, because it did remind them of soldiers.
There's a lot of similarities between Dog Soldiers and The Lair, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was kind of working through an ideal he had for a Dog Soldiers sequel or another film, and he just augment them to another creature. Because The Lair has a creature in it that is something new that he created for that movie specifically. So, but very, very similar in terms of the story, military personnel, and all that type of stuff. And it just didn't dawn on me. I won't say it's the best of his movies.
It's not
no, because I think by this time, in like Hellboy, I think he relies too much on the CGI aspects and not as much on the practical effects. The practical effects are good in The Lair, but I think he should have relied on those more. I also think that he didn't have the best of actors. I didn't really care for the performances as much. Whereas Dog Soldiers, it's so much fun to watch these actors in this movie. It's not so much fun. Anyway.
Yeah, it's so realistic, and it's like you can compare yourself to these characters. Like, all they want to do is get home and watch football on the TV. That's all they want.
Oh, shit. Yes, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, Spoon was having the time of his life. He was good.
All right. So now we've gotten through some of that, and I just want to add or ask, I guess is the good word. The thing about werewolf movies and why we don't see them as much as we see zombie movies and vampire movies, and hell, we probably see more fucking mummy films than we do werewolf films is because when these indie films rely on CGI werewolves, they're less than spectacular. If you've seen An American Werewolf in Paris, which I'm bringing back up again, you'll know why no one remembers the movie. It's
Dated CGI.
But the thing is, werewolf movies are hard. You know, and I wish they weren't so hard. I mean, I genuinely think that films like Ginger Snaps are not done as often because of how hard it is to do the special effects. But films like that, films like this one, even Werewolves Within, because though they spend so much time getting the werewolves correct, people appreciate that. And I think that's what allows this movie to stand the test of time after 22 years.
Well, and I think that's why Werewolves Within worked so well, is you saw the aftermath, or you would see small bits and pieces of the werewolf, and then you get the final reveal. You get that magical moment where you actually get to see the creature and you can appreciate it for what it is. Like, you don't need to show everything, which is what everyone wants to do nowadays, which is where you get the crappy CGI. If you do the little bit of like show don't tell, then you get a lot more out of the story and a lot more out of this creature.
Yep. And so we are getting to the end of our episode in regards to Dog Soldiers. I want to ask you both, is there anything else you have to say about the film, or you would like to leave our audience with as they think about watching this film again? I guess it's you, Ryan.
I'm gonna go ahead because the queen of her notepads is sitting over here just like brewing, so I got to get my words in. I love you, honey. This is a great movie. It's a great movie. It has the feel of an indie with a passion. I'm sorry, it has the feel of a big budget with the passion of an indie. You could tell everybody gave it their all. You could tell they cared about some details. You know, there's some of the aspects of like the military scenes that are grounded in reality and are outright factual. Of course, if a military unit was whistling while on patrol, they're probably going to, legend has it they're still doing push-ups. But I liked it from that standpoint. It was really, really good. And then, much like Predator and The Descent, when the twist happens, it's a full throttle ride to the end. And it's got some of those themes in there about, this wanting to just leave and go watch the football game. There's a character in there who, are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, we can do a little bit.
You can do spoilers. We're hoping our audience has seen this movie already.
Okay, so near the end, when Sergeant Wells is right on the verge of turning, and he tells Cooper, like, hey, you need to get out and tell him what happened, and it isn't for me, it isn't for the boys, it's for her, it's for my wife, also named Sarah without an H according to the subtitles. Her name's Sarah. Get it?
Yeah.
You love that. That just hit like, hey, this is bigger than you. And for a kid in 2002 whose brother was on the way to Iraq in 2003 and we didn't even know it, that hit. And even now, 22 years later, that hits. It's a great movie. It really is. I like it. I love the ending. We just watched it when I got home from work. We powered through it. And even though it was like, hey, let's hurry up and do this, I'm sitting there staring at the TV like, oh my God, it was awesome. So it's a really good movie.
Yeah, going off of that, like you said, they just want to get home to watch the game. And at the end of the day, the werewolves also just want to get home, which they can't really do because the guys are in it. It is their house, and there's so much hidden werewolf mythology throughout the thing, like the border collie. Border collies are the closest dog to a wolf you can literally get to. And then the family's last name is Uoth, which is Celtic, and the figure of speech is a meat of hounds is a huoth. And Uoth means horror or fear. So like they do all these little things. Megan shows with Claire de Lune, which is a song about the moon. Like you get the hint of, oh my God, she's a werewolf. you get all these little hints throughout the entire movie about werewolves that are just so well done. The whole movie is just so well put together.
It's awesome.
And like you get the werewolf vision, I even had a whole breakdown from the beginning where like I thought the guys were going to die based on their fears, because it was a very specific conversation they had at the beginning, and it was very close. Like Bruce says he's afraid of the self-destructive nature of the human condition, and he literally impales himself on a tree in panic of being killed by this werewolf, and Sarge is afraid of never seeing his wife again, and things that make his skin crawl. And like at the end, his skin is literally crawling off of his body so he can become a werewolf, and he blows up the house. And it's such a moving movie that you care for all these characters that you've only just met an hour and a half ago. You are cheering on Spoon for every single battle, and just this brotherhood between these guys, the love between characters is so well done. I mean, honestly, you can watch it if you are a fan of war films, you can watch it if you're a fan of werewolf films, and it is a great movie either direction.
That's a good point to say, is that this movie crosses genres and multiple different audiences can enjoy it. My thing is, if you want to have and the thing is, this film has a lot of stuff in it that you get on repeat viewing. Like some of the stuff we've discussed on this episode, I would have never gotten the first 2 or 3 times I would have seen it. I would have gotten them later, or I would have had to have this conversation in order to get them. That being said, I have never been bored of this film as many times as I've seen it. And when I introduce someone new to it, like my wife, I kind of rewatch it with this energy that I didn't have the last time when I'm watching it by myself. It's one of those films that is rewarded to the audiences, not only when you watch it repeatedly, but when you watch it with someone who hasn't seen it before. You know?
Exactly. It's definitely on our repeat viewing, so we constantly have these conversations, because there's like 2 or 3 movies we'll constantly watch. It's like this and Hot Fuzz, that you constantly rewatch these movies and you find something new every single time, and the 2 neurons connect and something all of a sudden makes sense that didn't before.
Danny DeVito, I get it.
Oh my god. So I want to thank you.
Well done.
Yes. All right. I want to thank you two for joining me on this conversation in horror while we discuss the movie Dog Soldier. Everyone out there, if you've been listening, I hope that when you rewatch this movie, you have a greater appreciation of it. Not only because I am a huge fan of werewolf movies, and you should definitely watch it, but also because even if you're not a werewolf horror film fan, you can still find something in it to enjoy, and enjoy it you should. I want to thank my guests for joining me on this episode. I want you all to go out there, search out some of the other amazing werewolf movies that we have discussed. Also, make sure to check out some of our other episodes. We've done a lot of great episodes, especially on the infamous classic American Werewolf in Paris, which I'm going to mention one last time, that you and I want to thank you all for joining me for.
That was good.
I want to thank you all for joining us for Conversations in Horror, and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.